Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 1. Sri Shuka Vacha. Evameta Prishtavana Yadbhavanamam Nrinam Yanmriyamananam Manusheshu Manishinam.
Sri Sukadev Goswami said, Maharaj Pariksit, as you have inquired from me as to the duty of the intelligent man who is on the threshold of death, so I have answered you.
Text 2 to 7. Brahma varchasa kamastu yajed brahmana patim Indramiyandriya kamastu praja kama prajapatin devim mayantu shri kamaste jaskamo vibhavasum vasukamo vasun rudran Viryakamo at viryavan Annadhyakamastavaditim Sargakamo adite sutan Vishwanandevanarajyakama Sadhya sansadako visham Ayushkamokshvino devo Pushtikamailam jajet Pratishtha kama purusho rodasi lokamataro Rupabhikamo gandharvan Srikamo apsara urvisham Adhipatya kama sarvesham Yajet paramishtanam Yagyam yajed yashaskama Koshakama prachetasam Vidyakamastu girisham Dampatyarth umam satim.
One who desires to be absorbed in the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence should worship the master of the Vedas, Lord Brahma or Brahaspati, the learned priest. One who desires powerful sex should worship the heavenly king, Indra, and one who desires good progeny should worship the great progenitors, called the Prajapatis. One who desires good fortune should worship Durga Devi, the superintendent of the material world. One desiring to be very powerful should worship fire, and one who aspires only after money should worship the Vasus. One should worship Rudra, the Rudra incarnations of Lord Shiva if he wants to be a great hero. One who wants a large stock of grains should worship Aditi. One who desires to attain the heavenly planet should worship the sons of Aditi. One who desires a worldly kingdom should worship Vishvadeva, and one who wants to be popular with the general mass of population should worship the Sadhya demigod. One who desires a long span of life should worship the demigod known as the Ashwini Kumaras, and a person desiring a strongly built body should worship the earth. One who desires stability in his post should worship the horizon and the earth combined. One who desires to be beautiful should worship the beautiful residents of the Gandharva planet. And one who desires a good wife should worship the Apsaras and the Urvasi society girls of the heavenly kingdom. One who desires domination over others should worship Lord Brahma, the head of the universe. One who desires tangible fame should worship the personality of Godhead, and one who desires a good bank balance should worship the demigod Varuna. If one desires to be a greatly learned man, he should worship Lord Shiva. And if one desires a good marital relation, he should worship the chaste goddess Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva.
Text 8. Dharmartha uttama shlokam tantu tanvan pitryan yajet raksha kama punya janano jiskamo marud garan.
One should worship Lord Vishnu or his devotee for spiritual advancement in knowledge, and for protection of heredity and advancement of dynasty, one should worship the various demigods.
Text 9. Rajyakamo manun devan nirritim tvam tvabhicharan yajet Kamo yajeta somam kama purusham param.
One who desires domination over a kingdom or an empire should worship the Manus. One who desires victory over an enemy should worship the demons. And one who desires sense gratification should worship the moon. But one who desires nothing of material enjoyment should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Text 10. Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradhi tivrena bhakti yogena yajet purusham paramam.
A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of material desires, without any material desires, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the Personality of Godhead.
Text 11. Etavaneva yajatami niha shreya sodayah Bhagvatya chalo bhavo yad bhagavata sangatah.
All the different kinds of worshippers of multi-demigods can attain the highest perfectional benediction, which is spontaneous attraction unflinchingly fixed upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by the association of the pure devotee of the Lord.
Text 12. Jnanam yada pratinivrit gunomi chakra matma prasada uta yatra guneshva sangah kaivalya sammat pathastatvat bhakti yoga ko nivrito hari kathasu ratim na kuryata.
Transcendental knowledge in relation with the Supreme Lord Hari is knowledge resulting in the complete suspension of the waves and whirlpools of material modes. Such knowledge is self-satisfying due to it being free from material attachment, and being transcendental, it is approved by the authorities. Who could fail to be attracted?
Text 13. Shaunaka Uvacha. Ityabhivya hritam raja nishamya bharatarshapha kim manyat prishtavana bhuyo vayyasiki mrishi kavim.
Sonaka said, the son of Vyasadeva, Srila Sukadev Goswami, was a highly learned sage and was able to describe things in a poetic manner. What did Maharaj Pariksit again inquire from him after hearing all that he had said?
Text 14. Etakshushrushatam vidvan sutano harsi bhashitum katha harikadho darkah satam snusadasi dhruvam.
O learned Sutta Goswami, please continue to explain the topics to us because we are all eager to hear. Besides that, topics which result in the discussion of the Lord Hari should certainly be discussed in the assembly of devotees.
Text 15. Sa vai bhagavato raja Pandaveyo Maharatha Balakrina Kai Krinan Krishna Krinam Yadade.
Maharaj Pariksit, the grandson of the Pandavas, was from his very childhood a great devotee of the Lord. Even while playing with dolls, he used to worship Lord Krishna by imitating the worship of the family deity.
Text 16. Vayyasikischa Bhagavan Vasudeva Parayana Urugaya Gurudara Satam Syuhiri Samagame.
Sukadev Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, was also full of transcendental knowledge and was a great devotee of Lord Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. So there must have been discussion of Lord Krishna, who is glorified by great philosophers and in the company of great devotees.
अभी हम एक और कंपनी से मिले थे असेंबली और वो
Hare Krishna reciters, please unmute yourselves. Hare Krishna, what verse are we on? 17?
I think we are
17.
on 17.
Okay.
I think I was muted. Text 17. Ayurharati vai pumsam mudhyanastam cha yanyasau tasyarte yatta chadonita utma shloka vartaya.
Both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone, except one who utilizes the time by discussing topics of the all-good personality of Godhead.
Text 18. Tarvah kim na jivanti bhastra kim na shushanti yut na khadanti na mehanti kim grame pashvo pare.
Do the trees not live? Do the bellows of the blacksmith not breathe? All around us, do the beasts not eat and discharge semen?
Text 19. Svavidvarahosta kharai sanstuta purusha pashuhu nayat karnapatho peto jatu nama gadagrajah.
Men who are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. Praise those men who never listen to the transcendental pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna, the deliverer from evils.
Text 20. Bile bato rupram विक्रमानये न शृण्वतः कर्णपुटे नरस्य जीवः सती दार्दुरीकेव सुत न चोपगायात्युगरगाया गाथा.
One who has not listened to the messages about the prowess and marvelous acts of the personality of Godhead, and has not sung or chanted loudly the worthy songs about the Lord, is to be considered to possess ear holes like the holes of snakes and a tongue like the tongue of a frog.
Text 21. Bhara param pat kirit justam mapyat mangam nanamen mukundam shavau karuno kurute sarpayam hare lasat kanchan kankanauva.
The upper portion of the body, though crowned with a silk turban, is only a heavy burden if not bowed down before the personality of Godhead, who can award mukti, freedom. And the hands, though decorated with glittering bangles, are like those of a dead man, if not engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead, Hari.
Text 22. Barhayate te nayane naranam lingani vishnu nirikshato ye padao nirnam to druma janma bhajau kshetrani nanu vrajato hareya.
The eyes which do not look at the symbolic representations of the personality of Godhead Vishnu, his forms, name, quality, etc., are like those printed on the plumes of the peacock, and the legs which do not move to the holy places where the Lord is remembered are considered to be like tree trunks.
Text 23. Jivaksho bhagvantan girirenum na jatu martyo bhilabhetu yastu Shri Vishnu padhya manjastulasya shvasvachavo yastu navedagandham.
The person who has not at any time received the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord's pure devotee upon his head is certainly a dead body. And the person who has never experienced the aroma of the tulasi leaves from the lotus feet of the Lord is also a dead body, although breathing.
Text 24. Tadsham saram hridayabhatedam yad grihimanai harir namadhyayai na vikriyetat yada vikaro netre jalam gatra ruheshu harsha.
Certainly, that heart is still framed, which, in spite of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration, does not change when ecstasy takes place. Tears fill the eyes and the hairs stand on end.
625. Athabhidheya angamano anukulam prabhashase bhagvat pradhana yada vayyasikratma vidya visharado nripatim sadhu pushta.
O Sutta Goswami, your words are pleasing to our minds. Please, therefore, explain to us as it was spoken by the great devotee Sukadev Goswami, who is very expert in transcendental knowledge, and who spoke to Maharaj Pariksit upon being asked. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the second canto, third chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Pure Devotional Service, the Change in Heart. Hare Krishna, please forgive any mistakes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, Prabhuji, we can hear you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So we'll be discussing certain verses from this very nice chapter. First of all, maybe we can offer the Mangala Charan. Om Jnanatimurandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Viditam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadanti Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Pada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Advaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinobando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Haripriya Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vinayvacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. So let me just get the verses up. Yeah, this is a very, very special chapter you have the fortune of reading today. Because basically in this chapter, by this point, the entire Bhagavatam has been summarized. Sukadev Goswami, he asked certain questions. And Pariksit Maharaj asked certain questions. And Sukadev Goswami is so excited he answers them all. And basically, if you can understand this chapter, in Bhagavatam, in the first canto, you need to understand the second chapter. The second chapter has so much essence of what the Bhagavatam has to offer. There's so many verses in the second chapter of the first canto, which is just so full of nectar, which then basically take us the whole way through this process of spiritual life. And then this third chapter in the second canto is also very, very important. It teaches us about the value of this human form of life. It teaches about devotion to Krishna as the highest possible thing. And it ultimately teaches us that we need to get the mercy of the devotees. So let me just share my screen here. So if I'm correct, we're going to be reading verses 19 and 20.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. So maybe if we could, I'll read the verse and the translation, and just as we're going through the purport, perhaps just make some comments to sort of break down and expand a little bit more on what Prabhupada is saying. Yes, there's so many nectar verses in this chapter. This is text 19, translation. Men who are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. Praise those men who never listen to the transcendental pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna, the deliverer from evils. So actually, just in context, just a couple of verses previously, there's one very famous verse, actually. It's very, very beautiful and perhaps quite strong. I think I'll just read this translation just to put it in context. Shukadeva Goswami is saying, by rising and the setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone. Everyone's life is like a little, like an hourglass. You've got a certain amount of time, and every time the sun comes up, and every time the sun comes down again, that time is being diminished. And it doesn't matter how rich you are, how beautiful you are, how smart you are, how big your house is, how many people think you're wonderful, that time you can never get back. But then Shukadeva Goswami said, except for one who utilizes the time by discussing the topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. Because by utilizing our time for discussing about Krishna, then actually we're preparing ourselves for eternal life. So that's why what you're doing here is so specialized, because you're utilizing your time. We're doing a chapter a day. Very, very honored to be in your association. So Prabhupada's purport for text 19. The general mass of people, unless they are trained systematically for a higher standard of life and spiritual values, are no better than animals. And in this verse, they have particularly been put on the level of dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. Modern university practically prepares one to acquire a doggish mentality with which to accept the service of a greater master. After finishing a so-called education, the so-called educated people move like dogs from door to door with applications for some service. And mostly they are driven away, informed of no vacancy. As dogs are negligible animals and serve their master faithfully for bits of bread, a man serves a master faithfully without sufficient rewards. So there's just to clarify, Shukadeva Goswami gives 4 analogies here. The first of which is that we're like dogs. For those who are not interested in hearing about Krishna's pastimes, and those who praise those who never listen to Krishna's pastimes, they're like dogs. And Prabhupada gave often the analogy that we work so hard in this world. You get born, you have some education, and you get basically pressure put upon you that you need to get some higher education. You work very, very hard. Going through a university, etc., is not particularly easy on the mind. And many people develop mental health problems in universities, actually. I remember one person was doing a PhD, and the thesis of the PhD was how by doing a PhD, one permanently damages certain psychological processes within the brain. So it's slightly ironic that by doing the PhD to prove this, they also damage their own psychological process in the brain. You do so much work, and at the end, you simply have to act like a dog trying to get some employment. This is why in Vedic civilization, the educated people, the Brahmanas, they would never be employed. Because simply in the pursuit of knowledge, one shouldn't have to conform to some higher institution. So continue, the persons who have no discrimination in the matter of foodstuff and who eat all sorts of rubbish are compared to hogs. Hogs are very much attached to eating stools. So stool is a kind of foodstuff for a particular type of animal, and even stones are eatable for a particular type of animal or bird. But the human being is not meant for eating everything and anything. He is meant to eat grains, vegetables, fruits, milk, sugar, etc. Animal food is not meant for the human being. For chewing solid food, the human being has a particular type of teeth meant for cutting fruits and vegetables. The human being is endowed with 2 canine teeth as a concession for persons who will eat animal food at any cost. It is known to everyone that one man's food is another man's poison. Human beings are expected to accept the remnants of food offered to Lord Sri Krishna, and the Lord accepts foodstuff from the categories of leaves, flowers, fruits, etc. Bhagavad Gita 9:26. Very famous verse. As prescribed by Vedic scriptures, no animal food is offered to the Lord. Therefore, a human being is meant to eat a particular type of food. He should not imitate the animals to derive so-called vitamin values. Therefore, a person who has no discrimination in regard to eating is compared to a hog. Which is interesting. One of the main arguments we meet when we tell them we're vegetarian is that we cannot be healthy. That actually, if we want to have proper protein, etc., we have to take meat. And not only is that scientifically not true, even if it was, even if, for instance, eating meat wasn't, eating a simply vegetarian diet was worse for our health, still we'd be vegetarian. Why? Not because we're attached to being vegetarian, but because Krishna is vegetarian, and we will only take the food that Krishna eats. Any food that hasn't been offered as sacrifice is simply, Bhagavad Gita says, we're eating sin. We're eating sin. Because anything here in this, sin means to act in such a way as to forget God. And if to think that we're an enjoyer, to think that we're an enjoyer of particular foodstuffs, is also sinful. But that same propensity, simply we make Krishna the enjoyer of the foodstuffs. We cook very nice preparations for Krishna. We put Krishna at the center. And Krishna, there's only certain things he accepts. Food's in the mode of goodness. Ideally, he will not accept meat or fermented things or intoxicating things. And therefore, we're not vegetarian, we're prasaditarians. So moving on. The camel is a kind of animal that takes pleasure in eating thorns. A person who wants to enjoy family life or the worldly life of so-called enjoyment is compared to the camel. Materialistic life is full of thorns, and so one should live only by the prescribed method of Vedic regulations, just to make the best use of a bad bargain. Life in the material world is maintained by sucking one's own blood. The central point of attraction for material enjoyment is sex life. To enjoy sex life is to suck one's own blood, and there is not much more to be explained in this connection. Prabhupada is quite clear about that. The camel also sucks his own blood by chewing thorny twigs. The thorns the camel eats cut the tongue of the camel, and so blood begins to flow within the camel's mouth. The thorns mixed with fresh blood create a taste for the foolish camel, and so he enjoys the thorn-eating business with false pleasure. Similarly, the great business magnates, industrialists who work very hard to earn money by different ways and questionable means, eat the thorny results of their actions, mixed with their own blood. Therefore, the Bhagavatam has situated these fellows along with the camels. So that's painting quite a gruesome picture of what trying to enjoy material life, particularly Prabhupada's highlighting sex life, material sex life, is actually, we're enjoying our own demisement. Sex life is described to be the shackles which are binding us to this material world. Because sex life, this attraction for other people based upon the bodily concept of life, this is basically the utmost manifestation of this ahankara, this false ego, thinking that I am the enjoyer and therefore I can exploit other people for my own enjoyment. And this sex life binds us to this material world. And so that so-called enjoyment we get from whatever sexual pleasure is actually the cause of our own suffering. And therefore spiritual knowledge, what it does is it actually makes us, it's like a reset. It actually makes us taste what is actually nice. What is nice is spiritual life, is chanting the Lord's holy name, associated with devotees, taking the Lord's remnants, discussing Krishna Katha, hearing Krishna Kirtan. This is what is actually relishable. But when we're afflicted by the jaundice of ignorance, Srila Rupa Goswami gives the analogy in the Nectar of Instruction that jaundice is a disease caused by bilious secretions. And when we have this disease, then we have no taste for sugar candy. But the treatment for jaundice is sugar candy. Therefore, we have to take the sugar candy, and we know we're getting cured when we actually develop a taste for it. So similarly, we may not have a taste for Krishna Katha. We may not be simply drinking through our ears, as Parikshit Maharaj is described. we may not have a taste for chanting the holy names, but simply by, Rupa Goswami says, carefully chanting these names, then we develop a taste, a natural relish awakens, and it destroys this weed of avidya from the very root. Therefore, we have to make some endeavor in spiritual life. We have to make some vows, some commitment to say, yes, I will chant this much, I will read this much, I will associate with devotees, I will do service, and even if there's no taste. And sometimes, yes, there will be no taste. Of course, Krishna shows us, he gives us taste at certain points to keep us enthused, to make us really hankering and desperate, and then you'll take away some taste and want to see how hard we're going to work. But by this carefully chanting the Lord's holy names, a natural relish awakens, and then we can taste what's really of taste. And once we have taste for Krishna's names, Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's form, then these material things, like eating thorns, then we'll simply disregard them completely. We don't have to give them up. We want to give them up. Yeah, initially we put on some rules and regulations to keep us in line, but actually we just want to give these things up. If we'll have no time for it. To continue with the purport, the ass is an animal who is celebrated as the greatest fool, even amongst the animals. The ass works very hard and carries burdens of the maximum weight without making profit for itself. The ass is generally engaged by the washerman whose social position is not very respectable, and the special qualification of the ass is that it is very much accustomed to being kicked by the opposite sex. When the ass begs for sexual intercourse, he is kicked by the fair sex, yet he still allows the female. He follows the female for such sexual pleasure. A henpecked man is compared, therefore, to the ass. The general mass of people work very hard, especially in the age of Kali. In this age, the human being is actually engaged in the work of an ass, carrying heavy burdens and driving Virat and rickshaws. The so-called advancement of human civilization has engaged a human being in the work of an ass. The laborers in great factories and workshops are also engaged in such burdensome work, and after working hard during the day, the poor laborer has again been kicked by the fair sex, not only for sex enjoyment, but also for so many household affairs. This sounds, again, fairly harsh. Like, Prabhupada, is it necessary? You're very much slamming these people. They're working so hard all day and night, don't know any better, and then you're calling them asses. But actually, spiritual knowledge is there to make us realize that this situation is not at all palatable. That actually working so hard, we have to question, why are we working so hard? When actually this human form of life is such a valuable opportunity to inquire into actually understanding who we are and simply to be engaged. Prabhupada's given the example now that you can go to India and you can see people with a Brahmin thread. They have a Brahmin thread, and yet they're driving the tailors and the rickshaws, or they're holding heavy loads on their back. And this burdensome work, the problem with this burdensome work is that it does not allow time for self-realization. It is not acknowledging that Krishna is looking after every single living entity. He's supplying all the food, all the necessities for the elephants. They're eating tons of food. And similarly, if we are actually just engaged in Krishna's service, he will look after us. We don't need to work unnecessarily. We have to do our duty. We have a particular duty, and we do need to work. But simply just enough to maintain the body and soul together. You get some income, you look after your family. But we have to prioritize. See, spiritual life is about getting your priorities straight. What's our priority? Our priority is to develop taste for Krishna Katha. Our priority is to develop absorption and hearing about Krishna and chanting his names. And because ultimately that's the test. It doesn't matter how hard you work throughout your life. It doesn't matter how rich you are, how well you think you've looked after your family. At the end of life, if you don't have taste for chanting Krishna's names and hearing about Krishna, then what does it matter? No one can save you. Your family cannot save you if you don't have taste for hearing about Krishna. Therefore, you need the mercy of the devotees. One verse later, we read just earlier, describes that unless one has smeared the dust of the pure devotees over themselves, then their life is meaningless. So Bhagavatam is heavy. It's heavy because it's having to cut through this layer of ignorance which is over our consciousness. Cheto Darpana margin, the heart, the mind is covered by this thick fog of material influence. And is prohibiting us from actually seeing who we are. Therefore, the Bhagavatam, the sadhus, they have to be strong to cut to this layer of ignorance. Because ultimately, they want what's best for us. Shukadeva Goswami, Parikshit Maharaj are having a conversation, and the conversation is so powerful because they want what is best for the Nishriyasya Salokasya Chakre Satpadam. People don't know what the goal of life is. Therefore, Bhagavatam was compiled simply to tell people the goal of life is. So that's why it's heavy. Yeah, I pray I can be a listener. So the final paragraph of this verse. So Srimad Bhagavatam's categorization of the common man without any spiritual enlightenment into the society of dogs, hogs, camels, and asses is not at all an exaggeration. Prabhupada is very clear. He's not exaggerating. This is reality. The leaders of such ignorant masses of people may feel very proud of being adored by such number of dogs and hogs, but that is not very flattering. The Bhagavatam openly declares that although a person may be a great leader of such dogs and hogs disguised as men, if he has no taste for being enlightened in the science of Krishna, such a leader is also an animal and nothing more. He may be designated as a powerful, strong animal or a big animal, but in the estimation of Srimad Bhagavatam, he is never given a place in the category of man on account of his atheistic temperament. Or in other words, such godless leaders of dogs and hog-like men are bigger animals with the qualities of animals in greater proportion. So spiritual knowledge is not about being appreciated by the mass of people. You see, everyone is looking for some validation, for a sense of being praised by others, for a sense of being respected, for fitting in. These feelings are very, very innate. And we can utilize these feelings in Krishna consciousness. You see, here is describing that one may be thought of as a great man. You see, you may take some great politician or philanthropist or someone engaged in so many so-called nice activities, and everybody praises him. They give him Nobel Peace Prizes, and he's got a statue with himself, and everybody says he's a very nice person. But ultimately, the people who say he's a nice person, Bhagavatam is saying, well, if these people are simply dogs, hogs, camels, and asses, then what's the use of their praise? Actually, we need to be seen as a devotee. Yes, if someone can recognize us as a devotee, they're moving in the right direction. We should never recognize ourselves as a devotee. But we have to change our estimation. We have to value whose opinion actually counts. And whose opinion counts is those who have credit with Krishna, Krishna's devotees. Therefore, we have to please the devotees. We have to serve the devotees. We have to make service to the devotees our utmost goal in life. And by their blessings, by their prayers, the attachment for Krishna and Krishna Katha will emerge. So I'm suddenly realizing that time is quickly flying by. If I'm mistaken, so we should finish by 8:30. So we have 1 minute. We can quickly do the next verse. I'll try not to speak so much. So text 20. One who has not listened to the messages about the prowess and marvelous acts of the personality of Godhead and has not sung or chanted loudly the worthy songs about the Lord is to be considered to possess ear holes like the holes of snakes and a tongue like the tongue of a frog. Purport: devotional service to the Lord is rendered by all limbs or parts of the body. It is a transcendental dynamic force of the spirit soul. Therefore, a devotee is engaged 100% in the service of the Lord. One can engage in devotional service when the senses of the body are purified in relation with the Lord, and one can render service to the Lord with the help of all the senses. As such, the senses and the action of the senses are to be considered impure or materialistic as long as they are employed only in sense gratification. The purified senses are engaged not in sense gratification, but in the service of the Lord in toto. In toto basically means completely. It's a Latin phrase. So every single aspect of our senses, there's beautiful verses given in the 9th canto of the Bhagavatam regarding Ambarish Maharaj. Savayamana Krishna Padara Vindayo. Prabhupada quotes him a lot. That Ambarish Maharaj, all of his senses are engaged in the Lord's activities, in the service of the Lord. You know, his tongue is in tasting the prasadam remnants, his nose in smelling the garlands, his eyes in seeing the deity form, his legs in walking to the temple. And everything is completely engaged. That means in total. The Lord is the supreme with all senses, and the servitor who is part and partial of the Lord also has the same senses. Service to the Lord is the completely purified use of the senses, as described in the Bhagavad Gita. The Lord imparted instructions with full senses, and Arjuna received them with full senses, and thus there was a perfect exchange of sensible and logical understanding between the master and the disciple. Spiritual understanding is nothing like an electrical charge from the master to the disciple, as foolishly claimed by some propaganda mongers. This, we can probably referring to one Swami who came to the West, describing his spiritual master, simply touched him on the forehead, and he received all the spiritual knowledge. The spiritual master fell back, saying, I have given you everything, now I'm exhausted. Prabhupada saying spiritual knowledge is not like that. It's sensible and logical. We have to use our mind and study, and ask relevant questions. Everything is full of sense and logic, and the exchange of views between the master and disciple is possible only when the reception is submissive and real. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that one should receive the teachings of Lord Chaitanya with intellect and full senses so that one can logically understand the great mission. We have intellect, it has to be used. How to use it? In understanding the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. But as we try and understand the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, we realize we cannot understand it. But still we use our intellect, and that means. In the impure state of a living being, the various senses are fully engaged in mundane affairs. If the ear is not engaged in the service of the Lord by hearing about him from Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, certainly the holes of the ear will be filled with some rubbish. Therefore, the messages of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam should be preached all over the world, very loudly. Of course, I'm sure you're aware that Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj referred to the printing press as a Brihar Mridanga. Because one Mridanga, you can take a Mridanga out in Harinam, it will be heard for one block. But a Brihar Mridanga, printing a book, will be heard all over the world. And these books are the potency. Prabhupada said these books are out now. The poison has injected the bloodstream. When there's enough poison in the bloodstream, it will take effect. Therefore, these books will take effect. Even if everything, the entire Hare Krishna movement overnight disappears, still because the books are there, it will start up again. Someone will read them, and then they'll think, oh, this is incredible, and they'll start worshipping Krishna. They'll start a temple, they'll install deities. Before you know it, the Hare Krishna movement is there again. It's unstoppable. Simply, do we want to be a part of it? We have to ask. How can we serve Srila Prabhupada's mission? So he wants to preach very loudly. And that is not as well. Back to Vinod Thakur. He would chant very loudly. He described his neighbours in the houses beside him. He could hear him chanting. Not that we have to chant like this, but by engaging in Harinam, we get a taste for chanting. That is the duty of a pure devotee who has actually heard about them from the perfect sources. Many want to speak something to others, but because they are not trained to speak on the subject matter of Vedic wisdom, they are all speaking nonsense, and people are receiving them with no sense. There are hundreds and thousands of sources for distributing mundane news of the world, and the people of the world are also receiving it. Similarly, the people of the world should be taught to hear the transcendental topics of the Lord, and the devotee of the Lord must speak loudly so that they can hear. The frogs loudly croak with the result that they invite the snakes to eat them. The human tongue is especially given for chanting the Vedic hymns and not for croaking like frogs. The word asati used in this verse is also significant. Asati means a woman who has become a prostitute. A prostitute has no reputation for good womanly qualities. Similarly, the tongue which is given to the human being for chanting the Vedic hymns will be considered a prostitute when engaged in chanting some mundane nonsense. Sati, of course, means chaste. So asati is the opposite, unchaste. So the tongue, if it's not engaged in chanting, if it's not engaged in discussing the qualities of Krishna, if it's not engaged in tasting the remnants of Krishna, Krishna's prasad, then simply it's course, everybody knows the prayer. Sarira means and judge Vendriya Taiga Dive Pray Visai Sagarede. The senses are a network of ignorance, and of all the senses, tongue is the most voracious, and you're like a path leading to death. We have to control the tongue. And the best way to control the tongue is to chant Hare Krishna and to take Krishna Prasad. Otherwise, you're like the frog, which is croaking very loudly, and is simply attracting the snakes to come and eat it. So this part of Bhagavatam, very, very beautiful, also very heavy. But I pray that by your blessing, some of this may go into my heart, and I also may be able to hear the holy name. So I've gone slightly over time, but not as bad as last time, so slowly making some improvement. On the schedule, it says now we're going to do some questions and answers and some comments. So I very much like to hear what devotees have to comment upon these verses. And if there's any questions as well, then we can try and discuss. If not, I'm very happy to continue waffling on, but I think that's probably enough speaking for me.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Namrata.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hari Bol, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, my Danut Pranam. Oh, glory to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhuji, very nicely explained. Thank you so much. Very clear for me. Thank you, Prabhuji. I just wanted to say, and Prabhuji, I wanted to say, we'll give a couple of minutes for reflection for people who want to say, but then after 8:40, we have a bhajan. We have bhajan every Sunday night, Prabhuji.
Okay. Very nice. We've got 3 minutes. Anyone can share some reflections. You've got to be kind to me and give me your mercy and share some reflections.
Maybe, Prabhuji, I can share some reflection. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Sorry, me again.
Please. No, thank you.
Prabhuji, I think it was wonderfully explained, but the thing I would add is, Prabhuji, where you said about how we can loudly chant our Hare Krishna mantra. And the only reflection I have, Prabhuji, is my family is not yet into Krishna consciousness, but I have full faith in Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. But I obviously, when I do kirtan in the evening, I sing it so loud and clear with the hope that it will go in my husband's ears. And there was a time where he would come and close the mandir room, and now come a time where he doesn't come and close the mandir room. And and whenever I'm sitting next to him, whenever I'm chanting, I was always loud before, and he would say, like, calm it down. And now comes the time, Prabhuji, where he doesn't say any of that, which means that the progress hopefully is coming, Prabhuji. But that's my reflection. Hare Krishna.
He'll be dancing soon. There's one verse actually by what's his name? I can't remember, but basically saying if we sit down and chant kirtan, then the Lord stands. And if we stand and chant kirtan, the Lord dances. And if we dance and chant kirtan, then the Lord comes and personally embraces us. There's always one step ahead. So Krishna's in his heart. And Krishna's just sitting there dormant, waiting till he starts to simply to hear about him. As soon as he sees that he has some slight taste for hearing about him, for hearing his names, for hearing his pastimes, then Krishna within the heart starts to purify everything. So really have utmost faith in the holy name. Prabhupada, one quality of Prabhupada, you complete faith in the holy name, complete faith in the spiritual master. And by this faith, then miracles can happen. So yeah, very nice reflection. Thank you for sharing. And I look forward to the day when your husband is giving his reflections on the Chad.
Hari Bol. Thank you, Prabhuji. All glories to your service and all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Okay, so I think bang on time, which I think is a first for me. I think the schedule is you move on to some bhajan. If it's okay, I'll kindly take a leave just now. I have some service in the morning, and I need to get some rest. I have to get up early. But at the same time, it's a very, very nice bhajan.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. So today I'll be singing the bhajan on Vrindavan Ramya Sthana. Before I sing the bhajan, we have our lovely Jyoti Mataji who will be doing the English recitation. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Beautiful Vrindavan is filled with Chintamani gems and many jewels, palaces and temples. Many regal swans play in the waters of the Yamuna, and in those waters a splendid golden lotus flower grows. In the middle of that lotus is a golden place surrounded by 8 petals. On these 8 petals, the 8 principal gopis reside, and in the center Lord Syamasundara and beautiful Srimati Radharani sit on a jeweled throne. The great beauty of the divine couple and their charming joking and laughter continually showers nectar everywhere. Narottama Das says, I pray that these blissful, eternal, transcendental pastimes of the divine couple may be always manifested in my heart.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Beautiful recitation. Hare Krishna. Vrindavana Ramya Sthana Divya Chintamani Dhama Ratana Mandira Ye Manohara Vrindavana Ramya Sthana Divya Chintamani Dhama Ratana Mandira Ye Manohara अव्रता कालिंदी रे राजहंसा केली के रे तबे शोभे कनक कमाल वृंदावन रम्य स्थान दिव्य चिंतामणि धाम रतन मंदिर ये मनोहर तारमात्ये हेमापीठ असतदलि बेबेसित अस्तदले प्रधान नायिका वृंदावन रम्य स्थान दिव्य चिंतामणि धाम रतन मंदिर मनोहर तारमाद्य रसा सने बसियाई दुय जाने श्याम सर सुंदर राधिका वृंदावन रम्य स्थान दिव्य चिंतामणि धाम रतन मंदिर मनोहर उरुपाला बन्यारासी अमिया परिचय खासी हस्य पर ही संभासाने वृंदावन रम्य स्थान दिव्य चिंतामणि धाम रतन मंदिर मनोहर नरोत्तमा दास कोई नित्य लीला सुख मोय सदा स्फुरक मोर माने वृंदावन रम्य स्थान दिव्य चिंतामणि धाम रतन मंदिर मनोहर हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Thank you for the opportunity. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Namrata Mataji, for the beautiful bhajan. And also to Jyoti Mataji for the nice recitation. English translation. Thank you so much. So I wonder whether Prabhuji is still with us or has he left? I think he has left. So let's end today's session. Very nice class today with our Vanchakalpa prayer, the Vaishnava prayer. We can all recite together. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much,
Hare
Sang
Krishna, everyone.
Mataji.
Thank you,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Thank you.